So welcome to chapter 9. I'm going to go through the slides in chapter 9. This is again one of those kind of perfunctory, providing information for a basic understanding. It gives you the context and the foundations of all of the information technology and the informatics that are driving healthcare today. So I'm going to share my screen. We'll go through these slides. So chapter 9, assessing and achieving value. And this is going to really be focused around the tasks that are going to be central to supervisors in information technology. And again, many of you, I might even guess that most of you will not be going into an IT specific role, but it's always important to understand the big picture, especially if you're going to go in eventually or right away into a supervisory kind of role. So let's look at the value proposition that is information technology. So when we talk about IT-enabled value, we're talking both about tangibles and intangibles. And if it's tangible, we can measure it. You can quantify it. X number of dollars, X number of FTEs that were saved, X number of procedures that are processes that are able to be done compared to pre-IT. And then you have the intangibles, and these are things that are a little softer, a little harder to measure. We don't mess around with recognizing value if it's not significant, and it should change as it moves across different organizations. The other thing, they talk about diverse value in a single investment. It should never just be an investment of any kind of significant proportion that solves one issue or that brings just one value point. So let's look at some IT objectives as outlined by some of the smart people in this area. Number one is infrastructure, IT infrastructure. It allows other investments or applications or solutions to be implemented and to deliver the desired capabilities. Some of those include communication, data analysis and management, the ability to perform analytics, decision support systems, and things like that. In terms of IT, it may sometimes be required that the adoption is mandated. Otherwise, if people are given the choice, they may opt not to use it. I think of the electronic health record transition. Many hospitals and many provider practices said it's too big. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. And so the transition to meaningful use and the government financial awards for adopting health IT is what moved that into that space where now it's mandated in a lot of corners. And then, of course, you're going to be looking for IT to reduce costs at some level. You're going to be looking at specific new products and services. You're going to also want to show how the adoption and implementation of IT systems can help reduce patient wait times, the ability to improve provider tasks, especially shortening the time frame, making it easier. You're going to want to be able to tie that to better outcomes for patients. And one of the big things, of course, that people talked about when EHRs were new on the scene was this idea of reducing errors. I will tell you that some things have been improved with EHRs, and I think I've said before, but it's opened a door to other issues. And adopting IT, of course, we've talked about this in a couple other chapters. It's a major strategic initiative. It's not an insignificant project undertaking. So in order to determine what value the IT implementation or adoption is bringing, there's a lot of places where you can find that out. Certainly industry publications and conferences, seeing what other similar organizations have derived, what value they've gotten, the things they've been able to do. Reading the industry research that's out there. Of course, Gartner is a big one in the IT space, and of course, the advisory board is another one. Listening to consultants and vendors, hearing what they have to say, and of course, doing your own internal analyses, looking at the financial return on investment for that project. In the performance of a formal financial analysis, you're going to look at the net present value, and that's simply you subtract the initial investment from your projected future cash flows that you expect to get from the investment. That's more of an accounting kind of thing, but you're going to look at a couple of data points, and net present value is going to be one of them. You're also going to look at the discount rate at which the present value of an investment's future cash flow. So again, headache, accounting kind of things, but they are important factors that your financial team is going to be at the table and very involved in if you're looking at an acquisition. When you're looking at the different places that the IT system that you're looking at, or whatever large IT project is, you're going to look at how the value is going to be realized. And it helps to kind of set up a matrix so that you can evaluate, is this just good because somebody thinks it's good and it's only good in this one area? And is that area really significant? Or does it have significant positive value across? So you're going to look at the different areas that bring value, and you're going to assign a score. And 1 to 5 is good. 1 would be small to minimal to no contribution, and 5 would be significant. And you're going to just look at what these values are that the system is bringing. So, for example, decreasing wait times is a huge thing. Patients get very frustrated when they call to get an appointment and it's not scheduled for 3 months out, or they say, my calendar isn't even there, you'll have to call back in a month. That would be a big, significant contribution if you could bring in IT systems that would eliminate that wait time. Let's look at something that would be minimal. Maybe helping employees schedule their vacations online. I don't know that might be nice for the employees. It might not be something that contributes substantively to the mission of the organization. So you want to look at these systems and go through and find where they bring value, assign a score to it, and then you can say, well, this is where the biggest amount of benefit or value is going to come from the system. Here's where there's some benefit, but not at all. And you're going to want to look at where the high numbers, where that significant benefit is coming, and what that means in relationship to the organization's mission. Like, is it in terms of hospital or healthcare? Are there really big, heavy-hitting values? Are they falling in those areas that you would expect to align with the mission and vision of a healthcare system? Patient care, quality improvement, better outcomes, etc. If it's all about toys for the employees, you might want to, kind of reevaluate. There's always a discussion when you're spending money on a big project. You're always discussing what's the trade-off, because there's not an unlimited supply of money. Families, individuals, we do this all the time. It's not an unusual undertaking for an organization either. So when you're thinking about which proposals that you're going to fund, kind of like if you're going to buy a Chevy Malibu, Cadillac Escalade, or a Mercedes, you kind of look at those 3 options, or however many options, and you decide. And in a healthcare context, you're going to want to ask, is it mandatory? Is this something we have to implement because it's required by CMS? Is this something we have to have right now? And if you want to compare it to the car decision, if you have a car that's running now, but you just want a new one, you can maybe put it off till next year or the year after. In terms of the hospital, is this functionality that the IT system is going to bring, is that something you have to have now, or can it be put off? And that's going to be related to whether or not it's mandatory. Does the staff have time to take on the project? If you don't have enough people and they're already working a lot of overtime, now's not the time to bring in another project. Do you have stable management present in the departments that are going to be most impacted up front? Have you done the value propositions and estimated the resources so everybody knows exactly what you're dealing with, exactly what's to be expected? Is there a less expensive application? Or can you do it without the IT approach? And are you able to do it on a slower pace so that you spread that investment out over time? All reasonable questions that are going to come up. When you're looking at proposals, some of the common problems that arise are fractions of effort. This doesn't always translate into dollars and cents to the bottom line. Just because you save a subset of employees time in performing a certain task, that may not always lead to reduction in FTEs in an area. So you have to make sure you're really doing enough drill down in your proposal that you understand what those savings are, and if it does. So if it's enough of a savings to reduce an FTE, then it would be. But if it's not, if it's just convenient and it gives people a little less stress during the day, but it's not something that's going to take away a fraction of an FTE or a full FTE, it's probably not substantive enough to count. We rely on people a lot to make these projects work, and it's a problem if we are counting on people to behave in a very prescripted and complex way, because people aren't always going to react that way. In my own experience, I'll give you an example. A couple years ago, we tried to get rid of transcription. Transcription services are pretty expensive, but we have digital voice recognition that's an option for a much lower price. There was a thought a couple years ago that we would just stop providing transcription, but we weren't going to be able to just mandate that physicians suddenly start typing their own notes or using the digital voice. People don't always behave the way you'd like them to or expect them to. So we had to implement the transition to the digital voice recognition software on a slower pace. Unwarranted optimism, I call it toxic positivity. Everything's perfect. You have to be able to recognize what your potholes in the road are, because if you don't allow for some disasters to happen, you're going to have them and you're not going to be ready to deal with them. Shaky extrapolations. Well, that's kind of like that rosy and optimistic belief about what's going to go on, assuming that the initial gains that you got in the first year are going to continue without any evidence to support that, can be a problem. And that first year is going to go pretty quickly. Underestimating how much effort is going to be required from the people on your team and on other teams. If you forget that and it becomes really burdensome, you're going to start getting people who push back against it. Fairy tale savings. That's when you, instead of reducing the budget and saving the organization money, you're actually just it's a shell game. You're moving things around. And failing to account for the costs that come up after the system's implemented and everyone's using it. And, oh, by the way, we have a licensing fee every year. Things like that. So to make sure that we're going to support a project that delivers value, we want to make sure that we've done all of our homework. We want to cross the proverbial T's and dot the proverbial I's. We want to make sure we don't skip over the proposal process. We want to make sure that we participate in fully and abide by the formal project proposal process. We want to make sure that there's accountability for the investment results. The business owner should be the person defending the investment. The project sponsors and the business owners have to understand that they both together share accountability for success in this. And it's important to keep these projects out in the open so that people can review things, can use things, can provide feedback. If you just kind of keep it in a back corner somewhere and then throw it out and expect everybody to jump on it and love it, it's not going to go well. And of course, in terms of project management, you're going to want to manage the project well, have a good project manager in place, somebody that's got strong skills and is effective. And you want to make sure that the entire management team is taking care to anticipate and manage the outcomes. You're going to there's going to be a lot of post-implementation follow-up. And it's important that just because you go through all that pre-work, you decide on something and you adopt it, and the team from the vendor comes in and you have a go live, the value that you're realizing does not automatically come in just because The Go Live team went home and now we're using it. It is going to have to be something that you monitor and collect data on probably continually after implementation. You definitely want to participate in celebrating the achievement of the value. Look at how we were more efficient at scheduling. We're more efficient at reducing wait times. We've saved this amount of dollars on FTEs that we didn't have to backfill when people left through attrition. We've prevented medication errors by, this particular module in this software. Whatever it is, you're going to want to capture, quantify, and then publish those results. And you're going to, I'm going to jump down the bottom bullet. You're going to want to benchmark the value of your implementation against your own performance. Here's what we're doing now with this new systems. Here's what it looked like last year. You're also going to want to benchmark against peers. See how you're doing against others of similar complexity and size. This chapter talks about portfolio investments. Again, probably most of us aren't going to work in an area like this, but it's good to have a general understanding. We're talking infrastructure, investments in infrastructure. That's your core IT functionality. The transactions, these are the things that the systems do, the activities. The informational investment, these are things like decision support systems, executive support systems, clinical decision support as well. Again, an investment in the kind of tools that help support the critical decisions that are made in healthcare every day. And of course, being strategic, not just about a plan and looking to the future, but being strategic about the acquisitions that you make, the systems that you choose, the way that you staff and manage these systems. These are important strategic activities that can make or break the ongoing success of an organization. The chapter also talks about the challenge to IT value and some factors that might decrease that value or get in the way of it. If you have the wrong strategy, if you don't define the applications that you need and you're always going back and adding things on and rewriting your proposal, if the organization fails to identify all the investments and initiatives that it needs, if the IT plan isn't well executed, and sometimes external factors come into play. There is, I think I told the story in one of my classes about what happened to digital voice recognition, but that's a really good example of an external factor. So in the late 90s, no one believed that the industry was going to be able to figure how to take spoken voice and translate it to text in healthcare specifically. And a lot of people felt that there were too many accents. Doctors had too many dialects and accents. It would never happen. In fact, that was kind of the common word on the street. It's just never going to happen. And the external factor that happened was that 9/11 happened on September 11th, 2001. And what that did is it kicked off an intensive effort by the United States government to figure out how to listen to thousands of hours of conversations by people that weren't native English speakers. And that focus and attention on being able to do that actually cracked the code for digital voice recognition that, evolves with the speaker. And now we have Dragon, which is probably the 800-pound gorilla in that space, that learns when you log in and set up an account with a profile, it learns your peculiar speech patterns and it learns to recognize them more quickly. It adapts to each user, which is just crazy when you think about what was believed to be possible 20 some years ago. So I like to use that example because it impacted the profession of transcription, medical transcription. It decimated it really. And it changed the ability for some smaller practices and smaller hospitals to lessen their line item on the budget for transcription. Some of those can be as expensive as $1 million a year. In the old days, they were. But it came about from something totally unrelated to healthcare. And it's a great example because it highlights in an extreme way how something totally external to your industry can have an impact. But the truth of the matter is external factors are impacting the decisions we make in healthcare every day. And the book mentions what our competitors are doing, how our customers are reacting. I'll give you another example, COVID. Although less of an external thing, I mean, COVID is a healthcare issue. But one of the things that came out of COVID was that telehealth came out of the corner of fringe and not very well received to being the only way you could be seen in a lot of cases. And now people are preferring that. And so you see a lot more telehealth options, telemedicine options. And before it was kind of, well, this is what we use to reach people in far out places. And now people are opting to use telemedicine and telehealth, televisits, even if they're not living in a remote place. And I think your case study looks at telepsychiatry this week. So another one of those things. So it's always going to be a challenge to quantify value for IT systems. It's really going to come down to, does it support the mission and vision of the organization? Does it improve the way that care is delivered to patients? Does it support growth? Does it impact in a positive way the productivity of the people within the organization? And is it a net positive for the organization? If you implement something and it ends up being more trouble, more money, more headache, and less productivity, it was the wrong decision. So you're always looking at IT bringing value that's growth oriented, that's positive, that's supportive, that is about doing more with less effort and doing more in a better way, doing it better than you did last year or last week or last month. I think the progressive realization of IT is kind of, I think it's obvious. It really refers to that idea that the biggest values come from incremental increases rather than like a big bang. And so getting a basic system in and then adding on and improving. And really just looking at the importance of sustained initiatives so that it's not just, again, once and done, that you're always as a team looking at how can we improve, how can we grow, how can we add value, continued value on top of our initial investment. Capgemini defines digital maturity as both digital intensity and transformation management intensity. And digital intensity is the extent to which the company had invested technology-enabled initiatives to change how the company operates. And again, I refer to the big shift from paper records to electronic records in healthcare. And then transformation management intensity is the extent of the leadership capabilities necessary to drive digital transformation through the company. And that's really talking about the willingness to put people in positions of power that have that ability to think digitally and to see the future and to kind of bring together what's needed in tech, in IT, in the digital space to further the company's transformation. And sometimes people in leadership positions are able to pivot, and sometimes you have to bring in new. And the people factor is huge. And the book notes that transformation management is more important than digital intensity, and I would agree with that. So this just summarizes what we talked about in Chapter 9. We looked at the IT-enabled value. We looked at the different objectives related to IT projects. We talked about scoring when we're evaluating the value and budget impacts. We reviewed some proposal problems that are common. A lot of those around money and time savings. We touched on ensuring the delivery of value and the IT value challenge, how we measure it, as well as the digital maturity concept. And that's it for Chapter 9. As always, reach out with any questions. Weekly quiz on Chapter 9 and a couple other assignments this week. And this is week 5. We have week 5, 6, 7, and 8. Hard to believe, but we're almost done. Thanks for watching.